Hello and welcome to my video on this week's discussion thread on ethical violations and board discipline. I found a published article by Rollins and Grimes in 2022 on the most common violations among counselors across 35 states. Failure to obtain CE hours, non-sexual and sexual relationships, misrepresentation of paperwork or credentials, and fraud were the top ethical issues that emerged. While scrolling through the Mississippi State Board ethical violations, I noticed as I scrolled through the hundreds of cases, non-sexual and sexual relationships and fraud seemed to be the most common issues that arose. I did find a Mississippi State case in 2020 for David Carpenter, who was accused of several violations such as inappropriate billing procedures, employing unlicensed counselors and presenting them as licensed, allowing his daughter to have a slumber party at his office, and allowing counselors to leave records out in the open. He was also accused of hiring former clients as employees, counseling across state lines without proper credentials. He had drug paraphernalia and alcohol in the workplace. He consumed alcohol in front of clients, used narcotics, and had confrontation with a known drug dealer at his office. He was also accused of signing a letter of recommendation using the name of another counselor, falling asleep during sessions, and failed to use and document an ethical decision-making model. The state board dismissed all but failure to use and document an ethical decision-making model when he hired a former client and used an unlicensed person to provide counseling. The board did not have sufficient evidence for the cases that were dismissed. The state board suspended David Carpenter's license for a year, and after that he would have to petition to renew his license. He also can't be a supervisor for at least 5 years and was fined over $500. One similarity between this article and the case of David Carpenter is the state's board disciplinary action. Rollins and Grimes' article explained that most states would suspend and initiate a fine. Another similarity of the article and case is that David Carpenter violated non-sexual dual relationships by hiring a former client. Non-sexual dual relationships were common across 35 states, with Mississippi being included in the 35. David also misrepresented credentials by hiring an unlicensed person to provide counseling, which was also common across the 35 states. The ACA Code does mention both ethical dilemmas that David violated. About dual relationships, A6B and A6C state that counselors should take extra precautions and document the specific risks and benefits associated with the client to show evidence later that steps were taken to reduce harm. C4B states that counselors only claim license and certificates if they are in good standing. David failed to apply an ethical decision-making model in his practice. If he would have done so, he would have properly documented the dual relationship with hiring a former client, and most likely would have not hired someone that did not have the proper license. C2G in the ACA Code addresses counselor impairment. Counselors should keep track of their mental and physical state that would hinder the therapeutic relationship, and depending on their internal state, they should refrain from counseling until they know that they are well. Counselors should also consult with colleagues and supervisors to address their impairment and whether it would be safe to resume their counselor responsibilities. My understanding of counselor impairment is the counselors who are not in the right mind or physical state will likely focus more on their needs and less on the clients, which can potentially be harmful to the therapeutic relationship. Ethical decision-making can be directly tied to my relationship with Christ. If I walk in a manner consistent with the Word of God and the example of Jesus, I am better equipped to handle ethical decision-making. Romans 12:2 says, "Not to be conformed to this world, but to be transformed by the renewal of your mind, that by testing you may discern the will of God, what is good and acceptable and perfect. Ultimately, I can determine what is right and wrong and make decisions that align with the Word of God." That's it, and have a great week.